As you're well aware, Durham is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. As a part of that celebration, 29 people who made a lasting impact on our city and the world around them are also being honored. The work of choosing the specific individuals to be celebrated was led by a 7-member honors commission, a group whose task proved to be a tremendous challenge because so many people have helped to make Durham what it is today. Welcome to City Life. I'm Beverly Thompson. Joining me to talk about the Commission's work and the results are our Commission Co-Chair Joseph Blocher and Commission Member Andre Vann. Welcome to you both, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So Joseph, let's start with you. There were 7 members on the Commission. How were you all selected?
We're selected by City Council, and I think that in choosing the members of the Commission, the Council was trying to come up with a group that could capture at least some of the diversity of this incredible town. So I was co-chair along with Michelle Gonzalez-Green. We were joined by 5 other amazing members, including Andre here, of course, also Ernie Dollar, John Shelp, Aya Shabu, and Francis Starn. And we all came from different backgrounds in education, arts, law. We grew up in different places. And I think that diversity really contributed to good conversations and a good process.
That sounds really good and really thoughtful, you know, to put this kind of group together. So Andre, what was the job that you were charged with?
Well, we had a twofold charge delivered to us by the city and the mayor, of course. But first, I'm reminded of a wonderful quote, I think, which sort of gives us some guidance, I think, here today. And the quote was, we leave dust tracks forever for the next generation to follow. And that's the idea that we are, in essence, recognizing those that have come before us. And I think that's what the great and heavy work of this organization, this committee has been. All right. There were 2 parts initially in terms of the charge. One was to look in the history and the past of the citizens of Durham and pull out those individuals who had made a particular and long-lasting impacts upon the city, historic-wise, community-wise, work-wise. And then after that, find ways in which we could share with the citizenry, along with the City Council, ways in which that could happen. And then the third part was, once that was done, to present that to the council for their review, and then allow the work then at that level to move forward to find ways to recognize those individuals.
So I heard you mention that they were historical figures. How in the world did you go about even thinking about, you know, who would be the ideal subjects for this kind of selection?
Great question. It really speaks to, I think, to the great depth of and richness, I think, of the citizens who've lived in this city. There are so many persons who have lived here, have made noticeable contributions, left those footprints for us to follow. And so that as a backdrop and guidance. And I think that will sort of help us as well as we look at, you know, the numbers of persons whom we try to find a way to sort of recognize. But Durham really, in essence, was overflowing with individuals. And so I think that's a part of it, that rich fabric of that, the contributions committed by those who are here in this city who helped to make this city what it is today.
So Joseph, I know you selected people to fit into 5 categories. What were these categories?
Well, the categories started as 4, actually. We wanted our work to dovetail with the work of Durham 150, which is planning so many of these fantastic sesquicentennial celebrations. And so we started with their 4 categories, which were history and education, arts and leisure, innovation and entrepreneurship, and social equity and robust democracy. And originally we thought, well, we can take our nominees and we'll fit them into those 4 categories. It'll be a nice sort of meshing. But what we found when we started to look into the individuals and to consider that rich fabric that Andre was just describing is that they didn't quite fit. We have a slightly different mission than the Durham 150 group, and we didn't want to cut the fabric, I guess I'll say, to fit the categories. We wanted the categories to fit the fabric. So we changed them slightly and ended up with 5, which were history and education, arts and sports, innovation, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy. We added philanthropy there. Social equity and robust democracy, we kept the same. And then we added a 5th, which was environment and health. So those were our 5.
Okay, all right. Well, it pretty much gave you a big umbrella to fit your selections in.
It did. The city's so
that's
vibrant,
good.
and there's so many, it's
Yeah.
individual, overflowing with
Indeed.
these amazing individuals, as Andre says.
So Andre, let's talk about community engagement. I know that's a process that's important to Durham and probably important to your committee as well. Explain to me how you went about making sure that people who wanted to have a say in the process could do so.
Well, first, you know, the idea and concept of participatory democracy is something, you know, if you ever walked past Durham or lived in Durham, you'd understand the importance
Right.
of that. And understanding that, you know, most importantly, we also understood that our word and those great recommendations that we would make may not have been the final word, but yet we had to hear from the community. We had to get input from them to sort of help guide us. And so with that in mind, we went about this idea of formulating and really talking among ourselves and creating a framework, if you will, for moving forward. And then after which, creating, thank goodness, you know, a real wonderful website. And then a way for people to sort of be able to go online and to sort of bring those nominations forward. But also, that was some work that we had to do. And so we had to immerse ourselves all throughout the Durham community. We had to use the vehicles available to us, social media. We were thankful to the Carolina Times, the Herald Sun, the News Observer, who carried wonderful pieces, sort of helping to invite the community to be a part of that discussion, because again, we knew that. And then most importantly, we understood that you know, these interactions and working with community groups and organizations really sort of helping to define for them, you know, our expectations of what we wanted and how we could really work with them. And then overall with the Durham 150 committee, work with them, inviting them to meetings, and then we would go attend some of their meetings as well to have a better understanding as to what these, you know, what was the end result, and that's what we attempted to do, to try to find ways to bring people together to sort of find the great avenues in which we could get there.
So I'm sure with all that community engagement, you had a long list of nominees. So how in the world did you go about narrowing down the number of nominees that you had?
Well, we did get a long list, and it was wonderful to see. As Andre mentioned, we got many through our website. We got some in just handwritten nominations and forms and through our conversations with folks. But we were fortunate that we didn't have to exercise very much editorial control. We did a few categories where we had to cut down names. One was that we had what we thought of as duplicates, that is names that we came up in our own internal deliberations and then were also nominated by community members, and we didn't want names to appear twice on the list, so we cut those. We also had made the decision early on not to include living individuals or groups and institutions and organizations. We wanted to focus just on individuals who have passed. So we received some nominations for institutions and groups and organizations, which are, many of them, just incredible building blocks of Durham, but don't fit our mission. So in our report, we tried to explain that we think it's very important to recognize the contributions of groups, whether it's Native American groups or brick makers or tobacco and textile workers, but that's beyond our charge. So we cut some of those from the list, but fortunately, otherwise, the nominations we got, we were just excited to receive, and they rolled into our work.
Did you hear back from people who said, oh, I nominated this person, why didn't they make it?
Fortunately, we haven't gotten too many complaints in that regard. The conversation is ongoing, though. I mean, we have certainly had people say, well, this person would be nice to have this person included, which really, I think, again, speaks to what Andre said earlier. This place is just overflowing with amazing individuals in its history, and we could have done another 150 if we wanted to.
Wow, so that leads me to my next question. Andre, in the end, I know you had two lists of people to be honored. Explain to me what the difference between those two lists are.
Well, if you look at the initial charge given by the city council, it was to bring forward these names of these persons who had made you know, important strides in the growth and development of the city. And so for the first part, you know, we achieved that, you know, with the 29 names there that sort of spoke to the various themes that were used. But then the richness came in when citizens all throughout the city and some outside the city who had ties to individuals in the city brought forward the names of individuals. And I think, again, that speaks to the rich variety and depth of the work that had gone on. That while it was easy for us to assume that we knew ourselves, those whom should be honored, but it was wonderful to sort of hear from the various communities through prompting, of course, to say that, hey, here are persons that should be known. And I must admit, you know, I've been here 31 years, and there were numerous persons on that list, and I had to say to myself, boy, I'm due for a class on this subject myself. And so I learned something I think many other citizens will find if they go to the report. The most important thing, go to the report, and I think they'll find a very detailed list. So you had the 29 honorees and then 121 other names that came in as well. And luckily, in many situations, there were duplicates of some of the same names. And so that sort of looked at, you know, the idea that there were persons who had recognized the work that had been done. And these are not necessarily individuals who are of great name, of great renown, but just average citizens who have just helped to, as we say, add a brick to the building to help make this sturdy city that it is today.
Authentic Durham, huh?
Authentic Durham all day.
Authentic Durham, yeah. So Joseph, you get the duty of telling us who those 29 individuals are.
A duty and a privilege, and I'll read them in the order that we presented them to the City Council and in their individual categories.
Okay.
So in the category of history and education, the honorees from the short list, and again, as Andre says, all 150 are honorees. These are just the short list. We had Louisa Whitted Burton, Dr. Lucinda Macaulay Harris, Dr. John Hope Franklin, C.P. Ellis and Ann Atwater, and Dr. James E. Shepard. In the second category of arts and sports, we had Ernie Barnes, Dr. Baba Chuck Davis, Reverend Gary Davis and Blind Boy Fuller, Dr. Monty Moses and Ms. Connie Moses, Alex Rivera, and Dr. Leroy Walker. In the category of social equity and robust democracy, we had Dr. Lewis Austin, Tana Hoffman Ramirez, Reverend Dr. Paulie Murray, Governor Terry Sanford, and Carl Whitman. In the fourth category, innovation, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy, we had John Merrick, C.C. Spalding, and Richard Fitzgerald, Viola Turner, and Dr. Mary Duke Biddle Trent Siemens. And then finally, in the category of environment and health, we had R. Kelly Bryant Jr., Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum, Dr. Aaron McDuffie Moore, Hildegard Rials, and finally, Dick Westcott.
Wow, you made that go pretty quickly. But I'll tell you, those are names that we all recognize, and if not, those are ones we should really try to do some research and find out who they are.
We all learned a great deal in the process ourselves, as Andre says. These were names, some of them were familiar, and to me, honestly, some I learned a lot about. And in the report, we have bios of those 29, so anybody who's interested can read more about those 29.
So tell us where the reports can be found.
So the report can be found online. I think that the link will maybe be available to viewers right now, but just to read it out, you can find it at bit.ly/2XV3GIX. And again, that report explains how we chose these 29 names, how we came to the 150 list, our process, has bios, some of the outreach materials that Andre mentioned, all available there in the report.
Okay, all right. Laudable work. I mean, that is just very, it speaks to what you contributed to making Durham recognize people who deserve recognition. I mean, there was a lot of work in this. So, so Andre, what do you say to people, again, who said there were so many other people who made historic contributions to Durham and they should have been on the list? Why not? What can I do now?
Well, we would certainly say that the idea of honoring and recognizing individuals does not necessarily end totally with the work that we've done. That I think each and every person and every organization, institution out there can, in their own place, find a way to sort of still recognize these individuals. And I know there are some who may create a piece of poetry in honor of someone. Someone may craft a song, a music. It could be a quilt, or have a small program or something. But I still think that there are still ways in which each of us, in that same participatory fashion, really work to sort of make this 150th anniversary what it is, an opportunity to sort of celebrate and honor those who have come before us, and yet leave a roadmap for the next generation to come.
Very important.
Very important.
So Joseph, have you all decided how these individuals will be honored?
We did. We made a recommendation to City Council. This was the second part of our charge. In addition to identifying the who, we had to come up with the how to honor them. And we were looking for a way to recognize people in a way that would be sort of flexible and accessible and effective, that it would get across the message to future generations. These are people who we want to particularly raise up and honor. And so what we recommended to the council, and this is ultimately for the council to decide, was a series of plaques on top of brick and mortar pedestals along the East Coast Greenway. And we thought about that this would be an effective, accessible way to honor these individuals, because the East Coast Greenway connects so many neighborhoods in Durham. It's accessible to people. They can get there. They can see the plaques. The thought is that putting them on brick would invoke the Fitzgerald family, such innovators in the industry there, who literally helped build the city into what it is. That the bronze plaque may invoke the sort of blue-collar heritage of the town, and that this would be a way that individuals, school groups, families could go and learn a little more, and then and hopefully contribute to that sort of understanding that you'd mentioned.
Very thoughtful.
Thank you.
Very thoughtful. So, Andre, do you know what the timeline is for when the recommendations that you just outlined here will become a reality?
Yes, well, we were pleased to have received communication from Mayor Steve Schul, of course, and Council Member Austin, who was our liaison, by the way. If I did not note her great work and effort in really helping to shepherd some of this work that had to move forward. And they've informed us that the city has a public art committee, and that committee will be entertaining some of the recommendations coming forward, and then it is that body that will then help make real some of the great work that will be going forward to sort of honor and recognize those persons. And so we imagine that we would probably be called upon at some point in time to possibly assist or advise along with that. But we are very confident that as we move towards the close of the year, November the 2nd, that somehow in between there that several programs and activities will take place in lieu of that.
Okay, all right. So, Joseph, as the mayor mentioned when you presented the names, that these names are a great conversation starter, and nothing defines Durham more than conversation and engagement, which we love. Do you agree? And do you feel like this can encourage people to talk more about the folk who actually made Durham what it is?
I certainly hope so. I think the mayor is right. I think you're right. If we have any monument to leave, if that conversation keeps going, that would be even better than a series of pedestals. I mean, I think even after 11 public meetings and countless emails and hours of conversation within the commission and with community members, we felt like the conversation was just starting, and we could have kept going. So I hope that other people, when they see the list, when they read the report, will feel the same way, and that the conversation does continue.
And even for schools. I mean, such educational.
Absolutely, absolutely. These are people who'd be great, topics of school projects. We could add names to the list. We consider this just sort of an opening bid. It could well be more.
Great, great. So, Andre, do you consider your work on the commission now to be done, or will it continue in some form or fashion?
Right. Well, I think the initial request that we had for the work, that part has been completed. But I think just as many other commission members are still actively engaged in much of the work that is going on now. And so, so we see that as very much as a continuation of that work, and that this was just a small part of that, bringing forward those names and recommendations to the City Council, but yet the work remains, and I'm very confident that many other organization groups that we work with, and we get calls, believe me, all the time from people who are saying, hey, by the way, we want to recognize X, Y, and Z. Can you research, find this and that? And so that work continues, and I think there are plenty of opportunities that still rest for us to sort of recognize this great 150th anniversary of Durham.
Great. I'd like to say congratulations to both of you and to the committee. You did amazing work, as the mayor said earlier. Is there anything you'd like to add, or you think our viewers should know about your work on the commission and how they can get involved still?
I just want to echo what Andre said in his last comments, that we consider the work almost ongoing. This is 150 names is a lot, but it really only scratches the surface, and we could continue going. We consider this, as I think we said when we presented it to the mayor, a living list. We look forward to it growing. Another 50 names maybe for the bicentennial in 2069. We look forward to being part of the conversations.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that does it for City Life. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Watch us on Durham Television Network and on YouTube. And listen to our podcast on iTunes. I'm Beverly Thompson. Thank you for joining me to learn more about City Life in Durham.